Greetings everyone, welcome to Chess Advanced. This game was played in a US Chess Championship that's currently being held in St. Louis St. Louis Club. And with the white pieces, we have Hans Niemann facing off against Abhimanyu Mishra. So this game is going to be an epic game, and Abhimanyu Mishra is actually on a streak of not losing roughly 60, 70 or 71 games or something. So that's absolutely an amazing feat in classical time format. So will he be able to retain it against Hans, or will he actually lose the streak? Well, let's see what happens in the game. So without further ado, let's start with this game. Here Hans goes for e4. We have e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to c4. He goes for the Italian game. Bishop to c5 in this position, just going for the Chico piano. And here you could choose to go for the Evans gambit in this position, and that would be absolutely spectacular if it's played in classical time format, because most people are actually familiar with it now. But the thing is that here just castles was played, not going for anything crazy. We have knight to f6, d3, and here just d6, just going for c3, castles now, knight bd2, and here just going for this knight to b6. Bishop to b3 now, just making some room for the knight, and here just knight to e7. And most likely what you see in these kinds of setups is just a rook to e1, knight to f1, and here just knight re-maneuvering back to g3, and maybe then you can start an attack towards him. The theory has been standard, but in this position here Hans deviates from it. He goes for this knight to c4, attacking that bishop, putting some pressure and saying that maybe I'll be trading that bishop right now, because well, you did not play a6 or a5 in this position to make some breathing room for your bishop, and now I will be trading that because that's a really strong piece. And here just knight to g6 was played, but now just comes this rook to e1. We have rook to e8, and now just going for bishop to c2, and here c6 now. Finally, if you allow it, well, I'll just put the bishop back. But in this position here Hans trades it. He goes for this knight caps on b6. Now just comes this a capture, and immediately striking in the center with d4. And here we have b5 by Abhimanyu. You could have gone for this e caps on d4 in this position, but the thing is that maybe you give white a bit too much, because after c captures you play b5, a3, just b4, just pushing that pawn all the way, knight to d2, and here just queen to b6. Now that queen is extremely powerful. Somewhere along the line those ideas could be there in the position. Here just knight to d4, you play queen to d8, bishop to g5, and now just b caps on a3, rook captures, and knight captures, and the position is absolutely fine. You have to develop these pieces as well. All of these pieces are doing absolutely fine, but you have to just put something, all of those pieces forward to try and attack towards the target, because you can see that these pieces are, well, very much active, and on the other hand you can see that black's pieces are a bit too passive. But here after d4 we have b5 now, but here just h3, h6, and now just going for this a3, bishop to d7, now just developing the bishop connecting rooks, and here just going for queen, bishop to e3, queen to c7, and here just knight to d2, d5 now, immediately striking in the center. And how do you take? Do you take with the e pawn? Do you take with the d pawn? Here Hans decides to take with the d pawn, and we have queen caps on e5, just going and centralizing that queen towards the center of the board. And how do you play it? We have bishop to d4 in this position, attacking the queen, queen to f4, and now just going for g3, attacking the queen, queen to d6 now. And what do you do in this position? Hey, you could choose to go for a very nice line in this position. I'm going to ask you to pause the video and try and find out the only attacking move in this position, which gives you, well, it's an aggressive move, and it gives you a little bit of an advantage. So have at. So congratulations to everyone who's able to find this move. Well, although there is some chances of playing bishop caps on f6, but it just gives black a little bit of an advantage. You don't want to do that. The move that you want to play in this position is actually f4, and f4 is a beautiful move, because the thing is that here after knight caps on e4 you play bishop captures, d captures, and here just knight captures. You trade everything, but after queen is gonna have to move. So here after queen to h5, now just getting the queen active, you can see that the bishop is already eyeing this, knight is already on a very nice square, queen is already eyeing all of this. You have to be a little bit careful somewhere along the line. Here f5 could be an idea. You can get the rook towards the f file, you can push those pawns. It's a really nice position to have with the white pieces. And if you play b6, then just comes this queen caps on h6. Even that is an idea if you want to go for a draw, because draw is always on the table for white pieces. Because the thing is that if you go for this g captures, there's a very nice line here, knight to f6 check, and the thing is that I'm ensured to draw, because once you go there, this is a check, and once you go back, and here I can just go back. Or also what I can do in this position is after this knight to f6 check, if you decide to go here, you have to be a little bit careful, because you are coming under the shadow of the rook, and the trouble is you lose the game immediately to this knight to e8 check that will come with a discovered check towards the king. And the thing is that I'm hitting the queen next, so your entire position would collapse right before your eyes. There's nothing you could do, and you would have to resign. So you're going to have to settle for a draw forcibly in this position, because the rook is already eyeing this entire file, so you cannot escape with the king. So that was a nice idea to be able to go for a draw in this position. But after queen to d6, hey, bishop caps on f6 was played. Not going for all of these crazy lines, and we have queen caps on f6, f4 now, and you could choose to go for this move with queen to e6 in this position. That is one of the ideas, because here h4 is definitely coming. You want to push those pawns towards it, and also queen was eyeing it. So instead of, you cannot save it directly, why not just push it? Here after d captures, you play this bishop captures queen to f6 now, and now just going for with the bishop back, we have rook captures queen captures, and just bishop to e6 in this position, rook to d1, and now just knight to f8. And after knight to e4 attacking the queen is going to have to move some way. Maybe you can go to e7 in this position. Queen to g6 is also an idea. Maybe you can go to even f5, and the thing is that the game goes on from there. But here after f4, we have knight caps on f4, sacrificing an entire piece and saying that, you don't have much. I'm already eyeing this pawn. After this, I'm going to be gobbling that up. Your king is going to be weak. I'll be at least in short of a draw. And here g captures was played. We have queen caps on f4, queen to e2 now, and now just going for this d caps on e4. Knight captures, bishop caps on h3, finally grabbing the third pawn as well. So you have 3 pawns for the sacrifice piece. But the thing is that your b pawns are doubled. Is it going to be sufficient for you to be able to push that to a victory, or is it going to be enough, that piece, for Hans to convert this to a win? Well, only time will tell. Here queen to f2 check was played, and queen to f2 was played, and now just queen caps on f2 with a check. King captures and rook a to d8, getting those rook active. Bishop is already active. You have to be a little bit careful. If you go for move like king to g3 in this position, makes definitely sense. You want to attack the bishop. Bishop will go all the way back to c8. Knight to d6 now you can try, because here after rook captures, you don't have the luxury to capture this, because I'm covering that h7 square. You would get back rank checkmated. So here after king to f8, you play rook to d1, king to e7, rook, knight caps on c8, rook captures, bishop to b3. I mean, the position is looking very fine, and white does have an advantage because he has the extra piece, but still the position most likely will turn out to be a draw. Pushing those pawns all the way and trying to maybe push for a win in this position does not make sense, simply because of the fact that you don't even have a single developed pawn. Your king is very weak. If your king was active, if you had pushed the pawns earlier, maybe they were on the 5th rank or the 4th rank, you would have some chances, but right now it's just very difficult. Here after rook a to d8, knight to d6 was played. So hey, what do you do in this position? Here just rook captures, and b6 was tried, but now just comes this bishop to f5. We have king to f8, bishop caps on h3, rook caps on d6, and now just going for this rook to e4. And the thing is, this is an open position, and Hans does have a bishop in an open position. That's definitely going to be helpful in the end game, and he's going to grind it out till the very end, until Abhimanyu is completely exhausted. So let's see what happens here. g6 was played now first. Rook to b4. We have king to e7, bishop to f1, and f5. Pushing those pawns finally forward. We have c4 now, and here just rook to d4, rook to b3. And in this position, the way to play this is actually just give up the b6 pawn. Yes, that's right. You heard me correctly. You want to give up the b6 pawn, because hey, the move that you want to play is b caps on c4. After rook caps on b6, you play king to d6, rook to b8, king to e5, rook to e8 check, king to f4, and rook to e2. And you can see that maybe, just maybe, you'll push those pawns all the way. But even if you have all those pawns like right in my face, I'll just sacrifice the bishop, and I'll maybe have 2 or 3 pawns for this. I mean, having this kind of setup against this, you have to understand this position. At best, you can get a draw. But the thing is that after rook to b3, here rook to f4 was played. It's not a bad move, but still just gives white a little bit of an advantage that you don't want to give. Here king to e1 was played, rook to e4 check, bishop to e2, and b caps on c4. Finally grabbing this, rook caps on b6, and now you might be wondering, well, this was the position, and you said to capture that pawn, and rook caps on b6 would be fine. But now we are in the similar structure. With this, just the rook being here and the bishop being guarding against this, how is it actually worse for black? Well, the thing is that it's not that much worse for black, but again, that was the first instance where you had the opportunity to be able to analyze and understand that maybe you can get a draw, and maybe you can get away after pushing all those pawns all the way, and the way to do that is sacrificing that pawn. But the thing is that here you have to be a lot careful. Here king to d6 was played. Now this comes king to d2. We have g5. Here the move that you want to play in this position is actually king to c5, and after this you play this rook to f8, just attack those pawns, rook to f4 defending, king to e3, and just rook to e4 check, king to d2, rook to f4, king to e1, and after g4 you play this rook to f6, just targeting all of these pawns. So if the king ever moves, you'll be able to capture it. Most likely you can play h5 in this position, and after pushing those pawns all the way, you will have some chances, but those are very minimal. I can always sack the bishop for a draw, and that's what you have to understand. But here after rook to b8, g4 was played, and now just comes this rook to h8, rook to e6, and bishop caps on c4, just finally grabbing a pawn. So was this a good idea to be able to bring the rook back and allow the capture of this pawn that also comes with the tempo towards the rook? Definitely not. Here rook to g6 was played, but now just comes this king to e3. We have f4 check, king to f2, and now just comes this g3 check, king to g1, and king to e5. And it seems like you have pushed the pawn all the way. You might have some chances in the position, but well, unfortunately you don't. Here rook to e8 check was played, but now just comes this king to d4, attacking the bishop. Bishop moves back, c5, now a4. Now just comes this c4. We have rook to d8 check, king to e3. But the thing is that the further black is moving towards the white king, you have to understand it's still, well, very much ball is in actually white's court. That's what you have to understand. That endgame, only person that can win this endgame is just white, because even if you push the pawns all the way, I always have the bishop to be able to sacrifice it, even for a single pawn. You cannot push this pawn, you cannot push this pawn. As long as my king is here, you're gonna have at least 4 tempos or 3 tempos to be able to push that. This pawn is gonna take 3 or 4 tempos, so you don't have much in this position, and that's the problem with this position. A bishop caps on c4 was played, finally grabbing that pawn. f3 comes, and hey, just rook to d3 check, king to e4, and just a5 was played. Now just comes g2, and now what do you do in this position? A rook to d1 was tried, but you can see the bar is shifting towards the white pieces, and it's very difficult to be able to try and do anything in this position, because how do you even push that pawn all the way? And that's the problem. I can always sack the piece for the pawn, and that's the thing. A king to e3 was played, rook to e1 check, king to f4, bishop to d5, and now just comes rook to g5. But here finally sacking the piece, we have bishop captures on f3, and after king captures, we have rook to a1, just finally putting the rook behind the pass pawn, and rook to a1 here was the only winning move in this position. If you go for any other move other than this, rook to d1, rook to c1, all other moves ends in a draw. The only winning move is rook to a1, putting the rook behind the pass pawn, and that's the way to do it. Here king to e4 was played, but now just comes b4, and you are definitely not in time. If you push this pawn, I mean, this is not going to do anything. So here after king to d5, we have b5. Going for king to c5, b6, we have king to c6, rook to c1 check, king to b7, rook to c7 check, king to a8, and here just a6 was played. It's crazy how the king was here, and now in a few more moves it's just there at the corner of the board, almost about to get checkmated. But unfortunately chess is brutal that way. Here rook to g8 was played, but now just comes this rook to h7, just finally grabbing that pawn. h5, rook caps on h5, we have rook to b8, but just rook to h6 defending that. Rook to g8 and rook to h7. Now just going for this king to b8, we have rook to h2, rook to a8, rook caps on h2, and rook to b8. Finally trying something, but the thing is that this position is far lost than you realize. Here rook to g6 was played, rook to d8. Now just finally going for this king to f2, rook to e8, king to f3, rook to b8, king to f4, rook to a8, and here just king to f5, rook to b8, and king to e5. Rook to f8 was played, king to d5, rook to b8, king to c6, and rook to a8 was played. But now just going for this rook to g5, and here few more moves later the position just completely collapses. There is not much to do here. Rook to c5 was played, but now just comes rook to h8, and there is a very fine way in this position to be able to end the game right now. And here Hans Niemann chooses to go for the fancy way to be able to end this game. He goes for rook to c8. Finally, the final nail in the coffin, sacrificing an entire rook to be able to win the game, because here rook captures on c8 was played. But the thing is that there is nothing you can do, because now just comes b7 check, and what do you do in this position? Here king to b8 was tried, but now just comes king to b6, and you have to understand a7 is going to be checkmate. There is not much you can do. And yes, Abhimanyu Mishra allows the checkmate to exist on the board. He plays rook to c7, and Hans goes for a7 with the checkmate, and that defeats Abhimanyu Mishra and also his streak that lasted for roughly 70 plus games. That's absolutely amazing. Reminds me of Ding's streak that went on for about 95 games or something. That was absolutely spectacular. He went on undefeated for about 2 years, and then I think he lost to Magnus or something, and that was really sad. But the thing is that, you know, all streaks gotta end someday, so there is not much you can do about it. But at this age, if he's able to muster 70 games without losing to anyone, that's absolutely spectacular. This kid is really gonna go on to do great things in chess for sure. But a great game by Hans. I mean, played splendidly, and even at the very end being fancy and just winning the game with a checkmate. That's absolutely spectacular. So yeah, thank you all for watching. I'll be coming back with some of these amazing games, so stay tuned to the channel, stay updated, and I'll be seeing you guys very soon. Thank you very much for watching.